people get $300,000 approved on these 0% cards. Other times it's 70, other times it's 200. I do think it's very important for people to have access to money. So if you're not prepared for the opportunity, you're gonna miss it.
Welcome back to another episode of the Journey to Solutions podcast, Kingdom Mentality, where we interview people from all walks of life and we share how they've transformed their obstacles into lifelong solutions. Our goal is to inspire our listeners that there's a life beyond your absolute wildest dreams residing ahead of you, regardless of your current or your past situation or circumstances. Today, we have the honor and privilege of interviewing Jack McColl from Utah. He's got owner and founder of two businesses, correct? What's the name of those businesses?
Credit stacking and scaled funding are the two most prominent businesses that I run.
Where he helps businesses all across the nation elevate through gathering funding. So, Jack, let's just start off with just explaining who you are, what you do, and some of those titles that you wear.
Awesome, Marco. First of all, I want to thank you for having me on the show. Really excited to be here. Thank you, everyone, for listening in. I'll make sure this is a super valuable episode. But my name is Jack McColl. I'm from Utah. I grew up in a small town in Washington, and over the last 5 years, I primarily help people, early stage entrepreneurs, get access to funding through 0% interest business credit cards and a couple other different credit products. But it took me so long to figure out different ways to fund businesses. And I just wish I had the information that I now know when I started in business. And so I like helping people get access to this type of intelligence so they can get access to money, so they can put that money into their business. Because I do think if you have access to more money, the chance of your success is increased. And so I've been coaching people on how to do it, and I have a done-for-you funding service as well that helps people get access to this type of capital. So they can use that money to either start a business, scale a business, or have additional capital for investments.
Okay. Well, take our listeners on a ride, right? I like to gather context. It's incredible the things that you're currently doing. But what I really want for our listeners to gather is that these tools and this knowledge that Jack is going to share with you, they're not made for just an elect few. Right? If you're willing to really walk this out, you can acquire what he has and even more, right? So let's take our listeners for a ride. You know, where did you come from? You know, what is it that you're doing today, and where are you heading, Jack?
Yeah, and so the reason I'm so passionate about what I do with helping people get access to this type of funding, because it's something that the system does not teach. You can go study at a good university, and they don't teach anything that I'm about to walk through this episode. Right. And when I found out about this type of credit, it completely blew my mind. And so I became fascinated with it, and I really became such an expert on it in a relatively short period of time, because I had inside information from certain bankers, these high-level bankers, and then I kind of reverse engineered what the underwriters wanted to see, right, and then started to test different things on myself, and then ultimately tested it on other people. And so it's just, I think it's such an advantage that you can have when you can get access to money. Right. But to rewind all the way back to when I graduated college,
right,
I didn't have any internships lined up. I was working minimum wage at a snowboard resort. I was big into snowboarding. I'm big into action sports in general. But I think I kind of had a slow start. Fortunately, I was trying to be a professional snowboarder,
right,
and I was competing in professional snowboard contests. I was winning some money, winning some of the contests. Then I got injured, and that completely kind of knocked me out of that dream. And I'm like, all right, well, let me, make some money, make a good use of my life, and try to be a value member of society. So I ended up getting a job working for a social media app called Yik Yak at the time. And I was always fascinated with creating content, creating video content, branding, things like that.
Right.
And then fortunately, through that employment opportunity, I met a guy who was importing hoverboards from China. And ultimately, we got into business together. And that was my first venture. It was importing hoverboards, the two-wheel self-balancing scooters from China, and selling them in the States. So we used my expertise at making good content, and then we learned how to sell them on Facebook through running advertising.
Right.
And at that point, we had no idea how to run a Facebook ad.
Right.
We just figured, okay, well, you can run ads, possibly sell them online. So we started to figure that out. And anything in business, you just have to jump in and start to figure things out. And it's always difficult at first. But over perseverance, you start to learn different things and get better, etc. But over the next 8 years, 7 years after that, I had several different business ventures. And each one of those business ventures taught me a different way to fund businesses. And I didn't know how to fund a business. Like, I just thought we would need our own capital. That was the only thing I knew. I just studied a business at a good university in Washington. And, the best way I knew how to fund a business was using my own hard-earned money. And at that point, I only had $5,000 to my name.
Right.
So, anyways, then I learned on the next business venture, how to bring on an equity partner.
Right.
Ended up bringing the wrong equity partners. I gave a majority stake of the company, and ended up having to buy them out because they were just not great partners.
Let's talk about that real quick.
Okay.
Bringing in equity partners. What was that like, bringing in the equity partner, and what cost did it entail? Because a lot of times, we see, young entrepreneurs, people who are early in business, looking to access outside funding, but sometimes they don't understand the cost that can come with that. Would you mind sharing that with some of our listeners?
Yeah, I mean, anytime you bring a partner in a business, there's a certain level of control you're giving up. In my scenario, I literally gave away 51% of our company, and they were running the ship. We were just, almost working for them. They had majority stake in the company. So you just really have to be careful. And we were also very naive at that time. Our contracts weren't tight. They promised X, Y, and Z, and those promises weren't in our agreement. To get one skill to get good at early on is contracts.
Right. I agree.
It's a good skill to have.
Right.
And a lot of times you go into a deal at the beginning and you're agreeing on certain things verbally, and it's all good, and you guys are on a good vibe and getting along and everything. But if something goes wrong in 6 months and 2 years, whatever it may be,
Right.
you're then going to be looking at what you signed,
Right.
the agreement on the paper. And if the promises weren't on the piece of paper, the agreement, then it can make things very difficult. Yeah. So you want to have certain things written down and agreed upon on paper.
And you said a significant number. You said 51%. Is there something significant on why they asked for 51%?
They were very experienced. They were 50 plus years of age.
Right.
Very experienced, and they had money, big money.
Right.
And they just knew, if we're going to put our money at risk, if we're going to put our time, we're going to invest our time, then we just want to be in control of the venture. And so at this point, I'm 22, and we're like, oh, great, you'll bring in these absolute experts. They have experience in e-commerce, etc. They're going to bring in this money. They're going to get us all these deals, going to get us into these different music events so we can sell our product there, which was these inflatable loungers, which did really good at these music events. Right. And so we just, our eyes were just lit up with all the potential opportunity. Right. And then because of that, we skipped steps. We skipped the important step of putting these promises into the agreement, where it's like, okay, if you are going to inject this much money, I forgot how much money it was. Right. If you're going to bring this much money in and we're going to give you X amount of the company, then you have to do X, Y, and Z things. Yeah. And then if you don't do X, Y, and Z things, there should be some sort of written down plan of what's going to happen. Are we going to, get the equity back? Like, what is going to happen if you don't deliver? Right. And so we just didn't have that. And so we had to end up, negotiating on what we think the company's worth. And then we had to buy them out, and that was not fun.
Right. Share with us a little bit about your childhood. I always say that, some of our greatest experiences and lessons, they trace back to some of the greatest teachers that we've had in our life, right? Mm-hmm. Who we give our ear to is who we give our future to a lot of times. So I always say these type of things that we have, they don't happen by osmosis, right? Mm-hmm. So take us back to your childhood. And do you feel like any of your childhood, maybe your father or relatives, have lended to the life that you live today?
Yeah, I'd say there's two people in my family that always inspired me to become an entrepreneur and be, try to be successful at being a business owner. And that was my dad and my uncle. My dad was a small business owner. He's a software programmer. He would design software that ran auto body shops, and it was basically he made himself a job. He didn't hire people really. He didn't have a team. It was just him running the show, and he didn't have to have a boss. And he made just enough money to be comfortable enough. Bought some of his time back. Could go on some family trips here and there, etc. And so, what really inspired me on that is he was working from home in the home office. He spent a lot of time with us, and he had the time and just enough money to bring us on one or two family trips a year.
Right.
And he was always with us, and so I always admired that, and I saw him do so many just different unconventional things, and then I realized to achieve unconventional results, you need unconventional efforts. Yeah. Okay, so I saw him take customer support calls from the ski lift. We're going on a snowboard vacation, and he's taking customer support calls on the chairlift. And so I think, and because I saw those things, like I blend my business and personal life so much.
Right.
Obviously, sometimes you need to put the phone down,
Yeah.
but other times, like, I'm going to take this call, I'm going to handle business real quick, and then I'm going to be right back
Right.
into whatever we're doing, et cetera. So I just saw how hard he worked, et cetera. And again, what I saw is he created freedom just with his time, so he can spend it with his family. Right. So that always inspired me. The other influential individual was my uncle, and he was a bit more wealthy, successful, right, bigger company, and I would always visit his house, and he had a big house and always host all the big family events. And his wife, my aunt, would give me $100 as a birthday present every year. Right. And that just always inspired me in a way where I wanted to put myself in the future in their position, right, to be able to inspire other people.
Right. And I hear you saying, freedom. And, I completely believe that our lives are the greatest blueprint and roadmap to another person's breakthrough. So how can our listeners implement the strategies that you have learned to access a life of freedom, so they can spend time with their kids and with their wives?
Yeah, I think if you reverse engineer what you want, a life of time freedom, location freedom, all these different freedoms, however you define it, right, most of the paths that get there is through entrepreneurship. There's very little W-2 jobs that I'm aware of that lead to certain levels of freedom. It depends on how you define it, though. And so for me, I just knew I wanted certain things in life. I knew I wanted to be able to work from home. I knew I wanted to be able to travel when and where I wanted. And so I just kind of realized that I do that by being an entrepreneur. Right. And that is the most difficult route. Like, it is so difficult in business because all the problems are falling on you. Right. Like right now I have a team of 28 people, just under 30. And I only deal with the biggest problems of the company. Right. Because everyone else handles the smaller problems. And when they can't handle one, all the biggest piles of shit end up right on my desk that I need to figure out. Right. But I think if you have the mindset of understanding that you are in business to solve other people's problems, that mental mindset, I think, is very important. Right. Without the problems, you don't have a business. Right. You're in business to solve problems. Right. So I think that just the mental framing around that is really important. And there's some days where I am, for a few seconds, and I snap out of it, kind of envious of the people who have W-2 jobs. They don't have to deal with all the stress. Right. They don't have the big problems of, am I going to make money this month? Because when you're W-2, you have you can get fired, laid off, et cetera, but you have a, guaranteed income for, a good bit. Right. When you're running the show, like everyone on my team, they're getting paid this month. Right. They're getting paid next month and right, probably for several months after that. But if we have an unprofitable month this month or next month, I'm the one not getting paid. Right. So I think you just have to understand the risks and
Right.
And just remember, if you're trying to go to these higher places
Right.
with this certain level of freedom, those are the risks that you are signing up for.
Right.
And I do think when you look at very successful people, let's not look at the billionaires, but people
Right.
like the millionaires,
Right.
people in real estate, just the millionaires, which is fantastic. A lot of them aren't even that intelligent,
Right.
which is an amazing thing because it goes to show you that you don't have to be that smart. You do have to be creative,
Right.
but you don't have to get perfect grades in school.
Right.
You just have to have the grit and work creatively.
I agree. People, will ask me, Marco, what was that pivotal point that allowed you to access the life that you have today? And I tell them, being humble enough to know that I didn't know everything, wise enough to identify what I didn't know, and then finding the right people. And you said something so important, right? And this is what I heard, right? That in the obstacles, there's opportunities. In the problems, there's solutions, right? And that's really, at the end of the day, what we get paid for is to put out fires. People ask me what I do for a living. I tell them I'm a fireman, right? Because we're putting out fires all day long, right? And you also said something else that really stuck with me: delegating responsibilities. That's giving you freedom today. What's the difference between someone who's self-employed and a business owner?
Yeah, when you're self-employed, I see what you're trying to paint.
Yes.
When you're self-employed, you're basically just creating a business in terms of a job for yourself.
Yes.
So you have your own, it's your own job.
Right.
It's not a job working for someone else. It's a job where you're working for yourself.
Right.
Where you're managing a business, this is where you're more so, you have a product or service, but you're managing people in the business that's helping keep it operating.
Right.
So it's more like you're bringing on certain people, you're training them to do certain things, you're delegating the tasks to those people,
Right.
and then more of what you're doing is not those tasks that now your employees are doing.
Right.
It's you're managing the people doing those tasks.
Right.
And so that's been a huge reason for some recent hockey stick growth for me, is being able to hire several people
Right.
on my team and releasing some of that responsibility.
Right.
And what I found is oftentimes where you bring someone on, so as a founder,
Right.
you're thinking about 100 to 1,000 things a day.
Right.
Right. It's very difficult to focus on a couple things because your mind is so busy. But if you can hire someone and train them on 3 tasks,
Right.
so they have a narrow vision of 3 to 5, a smaller amount of tasks, because they're narrow focused on those tasks, they can become better at those tasks than you.
Right.
Even if it's a system that you created. So like in our Done For You service, when we're helping people optimize their credit,
Right.
giving them customer service on instructions,
Right.
etc. At the beginning, I made all of these templates, all these customer service templates, the process to say this at this point, and the whole system. Like I made most of it.
Right.
And then when I hired someone to take on that responsibility of managing it, she became better at the system that I created.
Wow.
And this is because, again, she's focused on just a few things a day instead of me, like all these 100,000
Right.
things.
What type of mindset did you have to inhabit to sustain this life? Because it's one thing to get the money, right? It's one thing to get the business, right? To open up the LLC, but it's a completely different ballgame to sustain this quality of life, right? So what type of mindset did you have to inhabit to sustain this life that you live today?
Well, if you have the mindset of it's the only option,
Yep.
then you're not going to give up.
Right.
And I think there's also the balance you want to balance
Yeah.
of being grateful for what you have now and not being too complacent.
Right.
And it's a balance that I still struggle with on a daily basis. Like I want all these different things. I own an airplane. I just became a private pilot, but I want a bigger plane so I can bring more of my friends around, so I can provide bigger and more experiences.
Right.
I want a bigger house with more farmland, so when I have kids, they can run around on the farmland.
Right.
It's like I want all these different things, but there's that balance of like really wanting those things and being extremely grateful for what you have.
Right.
And I think I'm still trying to figure it out every day. But if you're too grateful for what you have, then you might lose some of the ambition to get those bigger and greater things. But if you're not grateful enough, then you're going to drive yourself insane.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So there's that
Yeah.
balance of being extremely grateful, but keeping that ambition
Yeah.
to keep pushing forward to get those things.
I hear it all the time, people who work for me, right? People I come in contact with, where a lot of times they're like, just when I get that balance, things will be okay. When that balance comes my way, things will be okay. Do you believe that balance comes our way, or do you believe that we actually create balance?
I do not think it comes. I think if it's like,
go.
oh, I'm going to be happy if this happens.
Yeah,
I'm going
yeah.
to be happy when I get this. I think you got to figure out how to make that balance now,
Right.
for sure. Things like getting a car makes you happy
Right.
for like a day. And then it's
Right.
like, oh, it's nothing.
So with the two businesses that you have, what's the centralized model around them?
The centralized model in terms of what we're doing for people.
What are you guys actually doing for other people? Because I hear service and everything that you're saying. I hear selflessness, right? So what is it that you're doing to add value to other people's lives?
Yeah. And so we'll just focus on the credit stacking offer.
Okay.
So credit stacking is my coaching program
Okay.
where I teach people how to build very strong credit and how to use that strong credit to get access to 0% interest business funding, 0% for 12 to 18 months.
Okay.
And I've found that this type of credit product is the easiest way for an early stage entrepreneur to get access to money without showing tax returns, without showing proof of income, without giving any collateral, anything like that. And so it's the easiest way to get access to money. And in that, by getting this type of credit, you don't have to give away equity, you don't have to self-fund it, and you don't have to pay interest, assuming you can pay off the card before there's any 0%. Or before there's any interest after the 0%.
Can you explain to our listeners what credit stacking is in layman terms, in simple terms?
Yep. So credit stacking is the concept of applying and getting approved for as many credit cards as possible in a relatively short period of time. And there's a big strategy behind it. It's not just applying for 20 cards in a day. There's some strategy. It can take a couple months to do this, but it's getting approved for these 0% interest business credit cards. That's 0% for 9 to 18 months. And then it does go to normal credit card interest, which is between 20 and 30%. So you want to use it on certain business models, for example. And you want to be able to make sure you can pay off the balance before you're going to incur any interest.
What are some of the best banks to do this through specifically?
Chase, American Express, Bank of America, Wells Fargo. A lot of the big ones have these 0% cards. There's several different regional banks and credit unions that have these 0% interest business credit cards. But there's many banks that have it.
Right. It's the word success. It's such a generalized and broad word, right? And I'm sure you know where I'm going with this one right now. But as an entrepreneur, right, as a business owner, right, as a man of significance today, because I believe success and significance are big. There's a big difference between the two. You're helping other people access a life beyond their wildest dreams, not just you have, and that's what really makes you different than a lot of people that I come in contact with. So how would you define that word success today?
I think success is in your mindset, because making more money is not directly correlated to being happier. I've made good money the last couple of years, and I have more things and I can do more stuff. I can go on more vacations, things like that. But it's not directly correlated to happiness. I think it's really relationships. That is what will make you the happiest, and I think that's how you become successful. You want to be mentally feeling great every day. So there's the balance of making sure you have enough financial resources to provide certain things and put yourself in a good living situation, and having a safe car and buying healthy food, things like that. But in addition to that, like making more than 10 to 20 grand a month I think there's a diminishing return on the correlation to happiness.
Right.
Making 20 grand a month versus 40 grand a month,
Right.
It's not that different
Right.
in terms of the correlation to happiness. So I think a lot of people making a lot of money, they don't realize that, and it took me a while to like figure that out. Um, you got to make sure you're investing in your people, in
Right.
your family, in your friends, in your romantic relationship,
Right.
your kids if you have them,
Right.
things like that. So you just need to make sure you have a good mental well-being.
Right. And, something that I highly believe in is making sure that we first, have our inner world solidified, right? Because when we do, everything's a byproduct of it. Like you were saying, the mindset itself. And I always say where our focus goes, our energy flows, right? So a lot of times we see people have this extravagant outer life, but they yet don't have self-discipline, right? Self-control, right? These little things. Let me ask you a personal question,
Yeah.
right? If you don't mind, do I have permission?
Yeah.
Okay, beautiful. How has faith played a key part in establishing these businesses, establishing this life?
I think for me, it's had a moderate impact
Right.
or influence. So I forgot the word you said
Yeah.
exactly. It hasn't been significant,
Right.
and I'm on that journey to learn more,
Yeah.
see more, feel more, etc.
Right.
But it's been moderate for sure,
Right.
not low, but moderate, but not significant. But I think the more people can invest their time to dive deeper into religion and
Right.
faith, I think the better. And I'm on that journey right now.
Right. How has vision played a part?
Absolutely crucial.
Because when I hear faith, faith is being able to see things that are not yet in front of us, right? Evidence in the things that are not yet in front of us. So I guess that would be a better question, right? How has vision played a pivotal part?
Vision has been absolutely crucial for
Right.
sure. Because I think the more crystal clear your
Right.
goals and your vision is, the higher chance of reaching that that target for sure. I definitely meditate and visualize and think about the exact outcomes that I want in
Right.
terms of the money I want to make, the house I want to live in, the car I want to drive, the friends I want to be spending time with, the places I want to be spending that time in, etc. I do think that's very important, because if you don't have a very clear vision with crystal clear details, I think you're more so straying in the wind.
Right.
So I think it's very important.
Let's take them behind the scenes a little bit, our listeners, because we can see that you live this great quality of life today, right? But I always like to take it to the foundation. So foundationally, what does that look like behind the scenes? Your life behind the scenes, like, is health a big part of your life? What does that look like?
Yeah, health is definitely a very important aspect of my life, because I think if you show up feeling like shit, you're gonna
Right.
perform like shit. So I do think eating super well, no tap water,
Right.
no terrible meat. You want to get high quality meat.
Right.
You don't want to drink a bunch of sugar. I'm very dialed in on the health stuff,
Right.
and also the fitness. You can't skip those things. If you're showing up weak, if you're showing up overweight, you're going to have, I think, subpar results.
Right.
So it all starts there. And I do think if you're in good shape, you have more confidence.
Right.
You feel better because of that confidence, and then you're mentally just operating better because you're healthier.
Right.
So all those things are super important.
Wow. Yeah, I love that. Let me ask you a question, because I believe leaders are readers, right? What are 3 books that have been pivotal and transformed your life?
Think and Grow Rich, for sure.
Right.
Think and Grow Rich has been an incredible book. I think that book is like the Bible of business.
Right.
I've probably read it 6 times. I try to read it every couple years or so. Another one was the Power of Now.
Okay.
The Power of Now. It's all about being present, and sometimes you need to slow down and just be more present in the moment.
Right.
That wasn't a business book, but just a mindset book in general, The Power of Now. Right. And then, this was a controversial one. Actually, no, I'm not going to say this one. I will cap it at 2 books.
Yeah. You sure you don't want to say that one?
No, just 2.
Oh, okay. And Think and Grow Rich. Let's go back to that book real quick because that was a transformational
Yeah.
book in my life, and I really love. I'm sure you remember this part of the book when there was the man who was in the gold mining field, right?
Yeah.
And he was going to crack that vein, and he was like 5 feet out, right? And how many times can we be so close to that prize, and we tap out, and that man comes by and he
Mhm.
says, you know what? I'll take over the land, right? And he sells the land to him. That guy digs 5 feet and he cracks the vein, right? We do that so many times in our own life. We're right there. Um, in Think and Grow Rich, what really stood out to you that played a huge part?
If you think you can do it or you can't do it, you're always right. It's mainly just the mindset of whatever you are thinking of, like that is going to be the outcome.
Right.
If you're going to have these negative thoughts, okay, the negative things are probably going to happen. If you have
Yep.
these positive thoughts, it's probably going to happen.
Yep.
So it all starts with the mind.
And it says right in those first pages, right, that there's a secret revealed in there. And I ask people all the time, what was that secret that was revealed to you? And they think about it, and after like 2 minutes, I'm like, it says it right on the cover. It says think and grow rich, because if you have the ability to believe it and conceive it, you have the ability to achieve it.
Yeah.
And I tell them, as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. So what is it that you guys are thinking about yourself on a daily basis? Because what you think about yourself is the reality that you're actually going to live. If there's one golden nugget that you can leave our listeners with, what would that golden nugget be?
Start with gratitude.
Gratitude.
Start with gratitude. My grandmother was the most grateful person I've ever met. The last couple days of her being alive, she was home at my parents' house, and she was just saying, "Thank you, God. Thank you, God. Thank you, God," over and over, almost like a ridiculous amount. It was crazy. But I think she lived to 98, I think it was, because she was so grateful.
Right.
She would wake up and say, "Oh, beautiful day."
Yeah.
And it's pouring rain.
Yeah.
Like, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Beautiful day. And so I think when you start from a place of gratitude, everything else becomes better.
Right. Our gratitude will determine our altitude in life.
Yeah.
Right. And when we're grateful for the little things, it accesses more blessings. I start every morning, and I thank God for my eyesight.
Mm-hmm.
For the ability to hear, the ability to smell, these little things, the relationships that I have been so kindly blessed with, because when it just gives off this wonderful aroma and fragrance where people want to be surrounded, by that. And that's why, I always tell people it doesn't matter, how much money you have, right? It doesn't matter how many yachts you have. Don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with those things, right? But they must be a byproduct of our identity, or we can lose ourselves in that rat race, And when you're grateful, when you're thankful, when you're appreciative, it will naturally lend to the byproduct of having, a blessed monetary life. I believe personally, that's been my experience. Um, give the listeners, I like practical application, right? I think it's super,
Mm-hmm.
super important, right? Being able to bring the cookies down to where we can reach them. So let's give our listeners one simple tool, right, to be able to implement these strategies that you have talked about, from bare bottom, right?
On how to potentially deploy the capital?
Yes.
Or how to get the capital?
To deploy the capital, but not only that, to live this life that Jack lives today, because our lives are a blueprint, right? And when people see you, they
Mm-hmm.
see a roadmap. How do I start today to live this life that Jack lives?
Yeah, I think to that question, I think I break it down into 4 steps.
Right.
Possibly 5.
Okay.
We're going to call it 5.
Okay.
I just added the 5th. The 5th is defining freedom.
Okay.
What is freedom for you?
Right.
What is that vision?
Right.
What are those things that you want? Okay. You need to map that out first.
Right.
Okay. You want these things. This is my vision. Just added that step. Step two is you need to figure out what kind of product or service you're going to sell.
Right.
That's just how the world works. How are you going to help other people? You're going to have this service where you're going to clean windows, or you're going to have this product that you're going to sell online. What are you going to sell?
Right.
And then step three, generally people need money to inject into that business
Right.
to either buy the product or
Right.
buy some equipment to start the service, whatever it may be. You need to have access to money.
Right.
And again, the easiest access to money that I have found is through these 0% interest business credit
Right.
cards. So access to money is step three. Step four is going to be put in certain systems and processes to help delegate some of those, not delegate, to help automate some of those things in the business.
Right.
Maybe some automations in your online service, maybe some back-end software that organizes some data,
Right.
just some things that simplify some of the things that are going on.
Right.
So you're not like having to do every single thing. You put in some technology, automate some things.
Right.
The next is going to be hire people and delegate some of those tasks.
Right.
And I always used to ask, I still do, I've always asked myself, why am I doing this task?
Right.
Why am I doing this task? It's because I haven't created a process and a system or training, and I haven't hired someone to do this specific task.
Right.
And some of the tasks you obviously have to do, but if you're doing it over and over and over again,
Right.
it should be a cue to you that you can hire someone else, train them how to do it, and delegate that task to them, and then you're just managing it.
Right.
Okay, so that's kind of the last step. You hire people, you delegate the things, and then you're just managing.
Right.
So at that point, you start to buy back a lot of your time
Right.
because you have a few people or a lot of people doing some of the work for you, or most of the work, and then you can focus on the growth of the company. How are you going to push the company to the next level? If you're doing the customer service, the logistics, the sales calls, the customer support calls, all the things in the business, well, who's focusing on the business?
Right.
Possibly you a little bit,
Right.
but the more you can focus on the business in terms of how are we going to get more clients, where is this business going to go, what kind of partnerships can we create, et cetera, that's working on the business. And so the more you as the founder, the leader can do that, the better.
Right.
And then hopefully you'll get your business to a point where it's running quite automated. 95% of the stuff is going great. Like
Right.
I have one business that's the case. It takes very little of my time at this point. It took several years to get to that point,
Right.
and it makes great money. Fantastic. Okay, so I did such a good job there. Now I can focus on a different business.
Right.
Okay, and I'm gonna try to do the same thing there. Build a real business that can run without you. That's a real business, I think. Not just becoming self-employed.
Yes.
And that takes a lot of time and a lot of potentially several years to get to, but that should be the goal. And we'll kind of put that into the vision as well. Okay, what does this vision look like? Okay, you want to have a business that you are owning,
Right.
but you're not running all the operations.
Right.
So you got to think about over time, who are these key people that I need to hire? One of the things that was stressing me out a couple weeks ago, and I just felt like the days are getting shorter and shorter. I'm like, I do 4 things and the day's done. But one of the things that was taking the most amount of time and I just wasn't getting enough of it done was just anything related to content, the editing of the content, the posting of the content on social media, et cetera. And I'm like, okay, well, I need to hire, that was my cue. I need to hire a content manager because I'm just not getting enough of it done. And it should be something that I get help with.
How do we identify? I believe the first step is we just don't know what we don't know in life, right? And then we know that we need to know. So how do we get into the know? How do we become aware of what we're not yet aware of?
Well, one good way to do that is hire mentors. Mentors have been huge for me. Joining different coaching programs, mentorship programs, basically the same thing.
Right.
But one thing that I've done over the last really 4 years, but yeah, 4 years, I find people who are doing certain things in life that I want to do.
Right.
They're making a certain amount of money that I want to make.
Right.
They live a lifestyle that I want to live.
Right.
So I want to learn from that person to see how they got there, right? And so I've joined a mentorship program on asset protection to structure all of my entities correctly in case there's a crazy lawsuit or something. Someone slips at my real estate rental property. Asset protection, tax strategy was another mentor that I had. So now I believe I'm pretty decent at tax strategy, understanding the tax code. Real estate, I've had a couple different real estate mentors, um, an operations mentor. So like if there's a specific area in life or a skill set that you're really trying to learn, the fastest way to learn it is to learn from someone who is already an expert. And you don't need to get like the absolute best because maybe they cost like, I don't know, 50 grand, but you can hire someone that's like a few solid steps ahead. And maybe you can just pay them, for example, 10 grand and work with them for a couple months. They teach you all these different things. They help you save a bunch of time, a bunch of mistakes. And oftentimes, if you, in this basic example, pay this person 10 grand, they're going to save you more money based on the mistakes you're probably going to make without them. And you're going to do it in, for example, 2 months instead of 12 months.
Right.
So if you value your time, it generally makes sense to pay an expert to learn straight from them to just expedite the whole process. So that's been a big needle mover for me for sure.
And I agree. I believe, information, it flows two ways, right? Either through a mentor or through our own experiences. And one is a whole lot less painful, than the next, right? And as leaders, we're lifelong learners. People think as you get higher up the ladder that you become accountable to less people. Does that seem to be true in your life or no?
In terms of
Accountability.
Yeah.
Accountability for me plays a pivotal point. I got people I'm accountable to all day long. I say this, as a joke, but true. My kids are one of the greatest that I'm accountable to. It was like I tell people this story. It was like a 12-gauge shotgun blew me back and hit me in my chest when I realized that.
You had a vest on?
Oh, no. This was metaphorically speaking,
Oh.
right? It was like I woke up and I felt like a 12-gauge shotgun, right? Blew me back because I realized that there's this Bible verse, right? And it says, right, if you guide one of my children astray, it's just as good as tying a noose around your neck and throwing yourself in the ocean, right? I got 6 kids. I got my hands full.
Congrats.
Right? Lord knows what I needed, right? So I realized that day that they're following my actions, my behaviors, my decisions, and my words. So there was such a high level of accountability, right? We call it the law of the mirror in leadership, right? People don't follow as I say, they follow rather as I do. Do you believe accountability has played a big part in your journey?
Big time. Exactly what you said. It's people are paying attention to what you do,
right?
Not what you say. And so I think you have to be a leader on doing great things that inspire people, ethical actions, etc. I think it's very important.
Very important. Where can people find you? Where can they find your services? How can they get in contact with you?
Yeah, my Instagram is a great place. Jack McColl. We'll have that link down below.
Right.
But if anyone's interested in taking their business to the next level in terms of getting access to additional capital, like an extra $100,000 at 0% for 12 months, that's creditstacking.com, where you can work directly with me and my team to help you build strong credit, get access to money so you can inject that money into your business and bring it to the next level.
And is this just for elect few, or does anybody really have access to this?
If you have at least a 650 credit score,
okay,
that's like the only requirement, and not having a bankruptcy.
Right.
If you have a 650 or above credit score, don't have a bankruptcy, getting access to capital is very straightforward if you follow the right framework.
Right.
There's over 3,000 people in my group. I've been doing it for the last 5 years. When it comes to credit card applications and just building strong credit, it's not taught anywhere. I had to figure it out myself. And through having this much data, 3,000 people, I know what exactly works and what doesn't.
Right.
And maybe a lot of people have gone to the bank already, applied for a credit card, denial, 2K limit, 5K limit. It's very common for those results if you don't know what you're doing.
Right.
And so I'm in the business of helping people maximize their efforts, get $20,000 to $75,000 limits on these cards, and then we do that on 5 to 8 different cards. So sometimes people get $300,000 approved on these 0% cards.
Right.
Other times it's 70, other times it's 200.
Right.
So I do think it's very important for people to have access to money.
Right.
You don't need to have it. But if there's an opportunity, if you're in real estate, for example, and you have a deal that comes across your desk, you generally have to move quick on that deal or someone else is going to get it.
For sure.
So if you're not prepared for the opportunity, you're going to miss it.
Right.
And building strong credit can take several months. It depends on where you're at, but it can take several months. But when you can just snap your finger basically and get access to $100,000 that you can use into that real estate deal or your business, or et cetera, it becomes a game changer.
I believe questions are the greatest way to reveal, treasure and gold, within others. The only question that doesn't get a response is the question that's not asked. So for our listeners, if you're not there yet, this is a blueprint to your life and where you want to head. All you got to do is just ask him, and he's willing to reveal all of that wisdom and all of that treasure. We have to stay, I love the analogy of the reservoir and the river, right? We have to stay like a river, forever flowing so we can acquire more and more and more. But if we don't constantly give it away, there's no way for it to come back and return. And that's exactly what I see you being. A reservoir, rather, it stores up and it begins to stink. And I see you as that river. You're growing. And as you're growing, you're releasing. And that's why you're so blessed in return the way that you are. I thank you from the bottom of my heart of being here today and sharing all of this, because I've got to learn so much myself. So I really thank you for that. And I thank you for giving these keys to our listeners. This doesn't just happen in the world. A lot of times, you see in these bigger organizations, people put a thumb on their people, and you're coming here and giving people free game. And I'm telling you guys this right now behind the scenes with no conceived notions, right? And that's super valuable. So I just want to say, from the Journey to Solutions podcast, we're eternally grateful, for that. If you guys haven't yet subscribed, you can find us on YouTube, on Apple, and on Spotify. And I just want to thank you again, brother, really for being here.
Awesome. Thank you, Marco, and thanks for everyone
Yes.
tuning in. Hope to see you guys soon.